On a sweltering Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves embarked on a routine errand that millions undertake daily: grocery shopping. Clad in a faded t-shirt, worn jeans, and old sneakers, he navigated the aisles of Ralph's Market in Beverly Hills, blissfully unnoticed by fellow shoppers. This wasn't his first time going unrecognized. In fact, Keanu cherished his anonymity, especially during mundane tasks like grocery runs. That day, he was gathering ingredients for a dinner he planned to prepare for his sister, Kim, who was in town for her leukemia treatment. The supermarket buzzed with activity. As families completed their weekly shopping, children dashed through the aisles, and employees restocked shelves. To everyone present, Keanu was merely another customer, a middle-aged man dressed casually, meticulously checking prices before placing items in his cart. In the organic produce section, he paused to select vegetables for a soup Kim had expressed interest in trying. Nearby, a mother struggled to manage her two small children while picking out fruits. One of the kids, a 4-year-old boy, stumbled and sent a tray of apples tumbling. Without hesitation, Keanu knelt to help gather the scattered fruit, offering a gentle smile to the embarrassed child. "It's all right, buddy," he reassured softly. "It happens to everyone." The mother, grateful but oblivious to his identity, thanked him profusely. Keanu continued his shopping, methodically checking off items from his handwritten list. Kim had specified organic ingredients, and despite the higher prices, he didn't hesitate to select the best options. His sister's health was worth any cost. At the deli counter, he patiently waited behind an elderly man who was taking his time deciding on cheese. Other customers displayed impatience, checking their phones and sighing. Yet Keanu remained lost in thought, contemplating Kim's condition and the experimental treatment she was undergoing. "Can I help the next person?" the deli worker called out. Keanu stepped forward with a warm smile. "I'd like half a pound of the low-sodium turkey breast, please," the worker, unaware of the Hollywood star before him, replied. "Coming right up." As Keanu waited for his order, he noticed a commotion near the entrance, raised voices and someone on a phone speaking urgently. He glanced over but dismissed it. Urban life was filled with minor dramas. His phone buzzed with a text from Kim. "Don't forget the ginger for the soup. Love you, brother." He smiled and replied, "Already got it. See you soon." The deli worker handed him the wrapped turkey. "There you go, sir. Anything else?" "That's perfect, thank you." Keanu made his way to the checkout area, his cart filled with carefully selected ingredients. He chose the line with the shortest wait, standing behind a woman with a full cart and a handful of coupons. The cashier, a young man named Marcus, was efficiently handling each transaction. As Keanu waited, he noticed the woman in front of him appeared distressed, counting and recounting cash in her wallet, clearly anxious about having enough for her groceries. "Excuse me," the cashier said to the woman. "Your card was declined. Do you have another form of payment?" The woman's face flushed with embarrassment. "I thought I had enough. Can you remove some items?" Without hesitation, Keanu stepped forward. "I'll cover the difference," he said quietly to Marcus. "Sir, you don't have to," the woman began. "It's no problem at all," Keanu replied with a warm smile. "We've all been there." Marcus processed the transaction, and the grateful woman thanked Keanu profusely before leaving with her groceries. This spontaneous act of kindness went largely unnoticed by other shoppers. "That was really kind of you," Marcus remarked as he began scanning Keanu's items. "Just paying it forward," Keanu replied simply. Neither he nor Marcus could have anticipated that in just a few minutes, this peaceful Saturday afternoon would erupt into chaos. Keanu's simple act of kindness was about to be twisted into something sinister, and his anonymity was on the verge of being shattered in the most brutal way imaginable. The calm before the storm was nearly over, and what was about to unfold would test not only Keanu's character, but also reveal the true nature of those around him. In 7 minutes, careers would be destroyed, reputations ruined, and the world would witness the consequences of power colliding with truth in the most unexpected circumstances. Just as Marcus finished scanning the last item, the first police officer appeared. Officer Bradley Matthews, a stocky man in his 40s with close-cropped hair and an aggressive demeanor, approached the checkout area with the confidence of someone poised to make a significant arrest. "Excuse me, sir," Matthews announced loudly, his hand resting on his utility belt. "I need you to step away from the register." Keanu looked up, confused. "I'm sorry. Is there a problem?" "We received a report of suspicious activity," Matthews declared, his voice echoing across the checkout area and drawing the attention of nearby shoppers. "I need to see some identification." The request seemed routine enough, but there was an edge in Matthews' tone that suggested this was more than a standard check. Keanu reached slowly for his wallet, ensuring his movements were visible and non-threatening. "Here's my driver's license," Keanu said calmly, handing over the ID. Matthews examined it with exaggerated thoroughness, as if searching for signs of forgery. "Keanu Reeves," he read aloud, a mocking tone creeping into his voice. "The actor." "Yes, that's correct. And what are you doing here today, Mr. Reeves?" The question was laden with suspicion, as if grocery shopping was inherently suspicious for someone of Keanu's stature. "Buying groceries," Keanu replied simply, "for dinner with my sister." By this point, Officer Jennifer Cole, younger and more aggressive, had arrived. "Sir, we received a report that you were harassing customers and acting erratically." Keanu blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry. What? I haven't harassed anyone." "That's not what we heard," Cole said, consulting a small notebook with theatrical precision. "Multiple witnesses reported seeing you following female customers, making unwanted contact, and displaying aggressive behavior." The accusation was so absurd that Keanu almost laughed. "There must be some mistake. I helped a child pick up some apples and paid for a woman's groceries. That's the extent of my interaction with other customers." "That's your story," Matthews said with obvious skepticism. "But we have witnesses who say otherwise." Marcus, the cashier, looked between the officers and Keanu with growing confusion. "Officers, I was right here the whole time. Mr. Reeves was nothing but polite. He even helped pay for another customer's groceries." "Sir, we didn't ask for your input," Cole snapped at Marcus. "Please step back." By now, a crowd had gathered, shoppers holding up phones, recording everything. Store security had arrived, along with the manager, a nervous man named Robert, who clearly had no idea how to handle a situation involving both police and a major celebrity. "Mr. Reeves," Matthews said, his voice growing more authoritative, "I'm going to need you to come with us for questioning." "Am I under arrest?" Keanu asked calmly. "Not yet," Cole replied with a smirk, "but that could change depending on your cooperation." The implicit threat hung in the air. Keanu found himself in an impossible situation. Comply and legitimize false accusations or resist and risk escalation. "I'm happy to cooperate," Keanu said carefully, "but I'd like to understand what exactly I'm being accused of." "Harassment, disturbing the peace, and suspicious behavior," Matthews rattled off as if reading from a script. "Multiple witnesses, Mr. Reeves. This isn't going away." The crowd was growing and the energy was shifting. Some people seemed to believe the officer's version of events, whispering among themselves about celebrity privilege and aggressive behavior. Others looked skeptical, having witnessed Keanu's gentle interactions firsthand. "Officers," the store manager interjected nervously, "perhaps we could handle this more privately. We have an office." "This is a police matter," Cole cut him off. "We'll handle it our way." Keanu remained calm, but those who knew him well would have recognized the subtle signs of someone preparing for an unjust fight. His breathing had become more controlled, his posture slightly more centered. "I'd like to call my attorney," Keanu said quietly. "Oh, now you want a lawyer," Matthews laughed. "Guilty conscience, Mr. Reeves." The implication was clear and designed to make Keanu look guilty to the watching crowd. Several phones continued recording, and Keanu realized that whatever happened next would be broadcast to the world within minutes. "I want a lawyer because I know my rights," Keanu replied steadily, "and I know when those rights are being violated." The tension in the air was palpable. What had started as a simple grocery trip was rapidly becoming a public spectacle, with Keanu caught in the center of what seemed like a coordinated attack on his character. But what officers Matthews and Cole didn't know was that their false accusations were about to collide with a truth so powerful it would destroy everything they thought they knew about power, justice, and the consequences of abusing authority. Officer Matthews stepped closer to Keanu, his body language becoming more aggressive with each passing moment. The crowd of onlookers had grown significantly, with people streaming in from other parts of the store as word spread that something dramatic was unfolding. "Mr. Reeves," Matthews said loudly, clearly playing to the audience, "your attitude is becoming increasingly concerning. We have multiple witnesses who reported your inappropriate behavior, and now you're being uncooperative with our investigation." "I've answered every question you've asked," Keanu replied calmly, "and I've offered to cooperate fully. I simply requested my right to legal representation." "Legal representation?" Cole scoffed. Typical Hollywood response. "Think your money and lawyers can get you out of anything." The comment was designed to inflame both the situation and public opinion, painting Keanu as an entitled celebrity trying to use his wealth to avoid consequences. "Ma'am, with all due respect," Keanu said, his voice remaining level despite the provocation. "Requesting an attorney is a constitutional right, not a privilege of wealth." Matthews moved even closer, now standing within arm's reach of Keanu. "You know what I think, Mr. Reeves. I think you've been living in your Hollywood bubble so long that you forgot how to treat regular people with respect." The accusation was rich with irony, given that Keanu was known throughout the industry for treating everyone, from A-list actors to craft services workers, with equal respect and kindness. "That's quite an assumption," Keanu replied quietly. "Is it?" Cole chimed in, consulting her notebook again. "We have a witness who says you grabbed a woman's arm without permission. We have another who says you made inappropriate comments to a female customer. These were outright fabrications, and Keanu knew it. But he also understood that in the court of public opinion, accusations often carried more weight than truth." "Those allegations are completely false," Keanu said, his voice carrying just a hint of steel, "and I'm confident that any security footage will corroborate my version of events." Matthews and Cole exchanged a quick glance, something that didn't go unnoticed by Keanu or several people in the crowd. "Security footage can be misleading," Matthews said dismissively. "Doesn't always tell the whole story." Robert, the store manager, had been growing increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. "Officers, I can pull up our security footage right now if that would help clarify." "That won't be necessary," Cole cut him off sharply. "We have eyewitness testimony, which is more reliable than video that can be taken out of context." The refusal to examine available evidence was glaringly obvious to everyone present. Several people in the crowd began murmuring among themselves, their initial acceptance of the officer's narrative starting to crack. "Officers," Keanu said, his voice gaining a new quality that made everyone pay attention, "you're refusing to look at security footage that would either support or refute your allegations. Why is that?" "Don't try to tell us how to do our job," Matthews snapped, his face reddening. "You Hollywood types think you know better than trained law enforcement." "I'm not telling you how to do your job," Keanu replied calmly. "I'm asking why you're refusing to examine evidence that could resolve this situation quickly and fairly." The question hung in the air, and its implications were becoming clear to everyone watching. Either the officers were incompetent, or they were deliberately avoiding evidence that would contradict their narrative. Marcus, the cashier, found his courage again. "Officers, I was here for the entire interaction. Mr. Reeves didn't grab anyone or make inappropriate comments. He helped a kid pick up apples and paid for a lady's groceries. That's it, sir." Cole turned on Marcus with obvious hostility. "Are you interfering with a police investigation?" The threat was implicit but clear. Marcus paled. realizing he was now also in the officer's crosshairs. "I'm just telling the truth," Marcus said quietly. "Your version of the truth," Matthews corrected. "But we have multiple witnesses who say otherwise." "Then produce them," a voice called out from the crowd. It was an elderly man who had been watching the entire interaction. "If you have all these witnesses, where are they?" Other voices began joining in. "Yeah, where are these witnesses? I've been here the whole time, and this is ridiculous. Show us the security footage." The crowd was beginning to turn, and Matthews was starting to lose control of the narrative. His face was growing redder, his body language more aggressive. "Everyone needs to step back," he commanded loudly. "This is police business." But Keanu could see something in Matthews' eyes that went beyond professional duty or even misguided authority. There was something personal here, suggesting this confrontation wasn't as random as it appeared. "Officer Matthews," Keanu said quietly, "have we met before?" The question seemed to hit a nerve. Matthews' jaw tightened, and for a moment, his professional mask slipped entirely. "We're done talking," he announced. "Mr. Reeves, you're coming with us for further questioning." "Am I under arrest?" Keanu asked again. "You are now," Matthews said, reaching for his handcuffs. The crowd gasped collectively as the metal restraints emerged. Phones recorded every moment as one of Hollywood's most beloved actors was about to be handcuffed in a grocery store based on fabricated allegations. But what none of them knew was that this moment of apparent victory for Officers Matthews and Cole was actually the beginning of their complete downfall. Truth has a way of surfacing, and when it did, the consequences would be swift and devastating. As Officer Matthews pulled out the handcuffs, something shifted in Keanu's demeanor, not outwardly. He remained calm and composed, but internally a transformation was taking place. Years of meditation, studying philosophy, and processing loss and injustice crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. "Officer Matthews," Keanu said quietly, his voice carrying a new authority that made everyone pause. "Before you do something that can't be undone, I want you to consider very carefully what's happening here." Matthews hesitated, the handcuffs halfway to Keanu's wrists. There was something in Keanu's tone that demanded attention, not through aggression or threat, but through the simple power of someone who had found their center amid chaos. "You're about to arrest me based on allegations that you refuse to verify through available evidence," Keanu continued, his voice calm but resonating throughout the gathered crowd. "You're ignoring witness testimony that contradicts your narrative. You're refusing to examine security footage that would resolve this situation immediately." The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. "And most importantly," Keanu said, his eyes fixed on Matthews, "you're doing all of this while being recorded by dozens of people who will share this footage with the world within minutes of this interaction ending." Matthews' hand wavered for the first time since this confrontation began. He seemed to realize the broader implications of his actions. "So, I want you to ask yourself," Keanu continued, "what's really happening here? Is this about justice? Is this about public safety? Or is this about something else entirely?" Officer Cole stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Reeves, you're trying to intimidate a police officer. That's a serious offense." But Keanu didn't even look at her. His attention remained focused on Matthews, and something in that steady gaze was clearly having an effect. "Officer Matthews," Keanu said softly, "I've spent my life playing heroes in movies, but real heroes aren't the ones who fight. They're the ones who choose what's right when it's difficult to do so." The words seemed to hit Matthews like a physical blow. His face went through a series of expressions: anger, confusion, and something that might have been shame. "You have a choice right now," Keanu continued. "You can continue down this path and see where it leads, or you can step back and examine what's really happening here." Around them, the crowd began to understand that they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just a celebrity using his status to avoid consequences. This was a masterclass in dignity under pressure, a moral authority that transcended official position. Marcus, emboldened by Keanu's example, spoke up again. "Officers, I'm going to have to insist that we review the security footage before this goes any further. As a store employee, I have an obligation to ensure that false allegations aren't made against our customers." Robert, the store manager, finally found his backbone. "Marcus is right. We need to examine the footage before anyone gets arrested for something that didn't happen. This is police business," Cole insisted, but her voice lacked conviction now. "No," said the elderly man who had spoken up earlier. He stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had lived through enough injustice to recognize it when he saw it. "This is about right and wrong, and what you're doing is wrong." Other voices began joining in. "Check the cameras. This is harassment. Where are these alleged witnesses?" Matthews looked around at the growing crowd, his confidence visibly shaking. The narrative he and Cole had constructed was crumbling in real time, and they were rapidly losing control of the situation. But Keanu wasn't finished. He took a small step forward, not aggressive but somehow commanding attention. "You know what I think is really happening here," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I think someone made a phone call. I think someone saw me in this store and decided to cause trouble. I think this has nothing to do with harassment or inappropriate behavior, and everything to do with someone who has a problem with me personally." Matthew's face went pale. The accusation had hit close to home, and everyone watching could see it. "That's ridiculous," Matthews stammered. "Is it?" Keanu asked. "Then why won't you examine the security footage?" The crowd was starting to shift, and Matthews was losing grip on the situation. His face flushed, and his body language turned aggressive. "Everyone needs to step back," he barked. "This is police business." Yet, Keanu noticed something deeper in Matthews' eyes, an intensity that hinted this confrontation was more than just a routine call. "Officer Matthews," Keanu said softly, "have we met before?" The question struck a nerve. Matthews' jaw clenched, and for a fleeting moment, his professional facade cracked. "We're done talking," he declared. "Mr. Reeves, you're coming with us for further questioning." "Am I under arrest?" Keanu pressed. "You are now," Matthews replied, pulling out his handcuffs. The crowd gasped as the metal clinked, capturing the moment on their phones. One of Hollywood's most cherished actors about to be handcuffed over false claims. But unbeknownst to them, this apparent triumph for Matthews and Cole marked the onset of their downfall. For truth has a way of surfacing. As Matthews brandished the cuffs, something shifted within Keanu. Outwardly calm, he was undergoing an internal metamorphosis. Years of meditation, philosophical study, and grappling with loss and injustice crystallized into a moment of profound clarity. "Officer Matthews," Keanu said, his voice now imbued with authority, "before you take an irreversible step, consider what's unfolding here." Matthews hesitated, the handcuffs poised mid-air. There was something in Keanu's tone that commanded attention, not through aggression, but through the quiet strength of someone centered amidst chaos. "You're about to arrest me based on unverified allegations," Keanu continued, his voice steady and resonant. "You're ignoring witness accounts that contradict your narrative. You're refusing to review security footage that could resolve this matter instantly." The crowd fell silent, captivated by his words. "And most importantly," Keanu added, locking eyes with Matthews, "you're doing this while being recorded by dozens of people who will share this footage with the world within minutes." For the first time, Matthews' hand trembled. He began to grasp the broader implications of his actions. "So, I urge you to ask yourself," Keanu continued, "what's truly happening here? Is this about justice? Is it about public safety? Or is it about something else entirely?" Officer Cole stepped forward, attempting to regain control. "Mr. Reeves, you're trying to intimidate a police officer. That's a serious offense." But Keanu remained focused on Matthews, his steady gaze clearly affecting him. "Officer Matthews," Keanu said softly, "I've spent my life portraying heroes in films, but real heroes are those who choose what's right when it's difficult. The words struck Matthews like a physical blow. His face cycled through anger, confusion, and perhaps shame. "You have a choice," Keanu continued. "You can persist down this path and see where it leads, or you can step back and reassess what's truly happening." Around them, the crowd began to realize they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't merely a celebrity leveraging his status to evade consequences. It was a masterclass in dignity under pressure, a display of moral authority that transcended official rank. Marcus, inspired by Keanu's example, spoke up. "Officers, I insist we review the security footage before this escalates." As a store employee, he felt obligated to ensure that false allegations weren't made against customers. Robert, the store manager, finally found his courage. "Marcus is right. We need to check the footage before anyone is arrested for something that didn't occur. This is police business," Cole insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "No," said an elderly man who had previously spoken up. He stepped forward, his voice resonating with the authority of someone who had witnessed enough injustice to recognize it. "This is about right and wrong, and what you're doing is wrong." Other voices joined in. "Check the cameras. This is harassment. Where are these alleged witnesses?" Matthews surveyed the crowd, his confidence visibly waning. The narrative he and Cole had constructed was disintegrating in real time, and they were losing control. But Keanu wasn't finished. He took a small step forward, not aggressive but somehow commanding attention. "You know what I believe is really happening here," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I think someone made a phone call. I think someone saw me in this store and decided to stir trouble. This has nothing to do with harassment or inappropriate behavior. It has everything to do with someone who has a personal issue with me." Matthew's face drained of color. The accusation struck close to home, and everyone could see it. "That's absurd," Matthews stammered. "Is it?" Keanu pressed. "Then why won't you review the security footage? Why won't you produce these witnesses? Why are you so determined to arrest me without any actual evidence?" The questions hung in the air like accusations, and suddenly, the power dynamic in the grocery store had completely shifted. Matthews and Cole, who had arrived with the authority of law enforcement, now appeared to be the ones on trial. "I'll tell you what's going to happen," Keanu said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had transcended fear. "You're going to put those handcuffs away. You're going to review the security footage. And you're going to either produce these alleged witnesses or admit they don't exist." It wasn't a demand or a threat. It was a simple statement of what justice required. Everyone present understood Keanu was right. But what Matthews did next would either salvage his career or lead to its destruction, for the man before him had just demonstrated something that couldn't be taught in any police academy. The power of moral authority confronting corruption. The moment of truth had arrived, and the entire world was watching. Officer Matthews stood frozen, the handcuffs still in his grasp, as Keanu's words echoed through the suddenly silent grocery store. Time seemed to stand still. Dozens of phones recorded, a crowd of witnesses observed, and a moral reckoning unfolded in real time. Then Matthews' radio crackled to life. "Unit 47, this is dispatch. What's your status on the Reeves situation?" The mention of Keanu's name over the radio sent shockwaves through the crowd. How did dispatch know this was about Keanu specifically? The implication was clear. This wasn't a random response to a complaint. It was a targeted operation. Matthews fumbled for his radio, his hands visibly shaking. "Dispatch, we're handling the situation." "Copy that. Command wants an update ASAP." The call came from high up, if you catch my drift. The radio fell silent, but the damage was done. Everyone in the store had heard the exchange, and the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place with devastating clarity. "High up," Keanu repeated quietly, his voice resonating across the silent store. "Officer Matthews, who exactly called in this complaint?" Matthews' face shifted from red to ashen. He was clearly in over his head. realizing that what he thought was a routine harassment of a celebrity had morphed into a public exposure of corruption. Officer Cole attempted to salvage the situation. "That's confidential police information. We're not required to." "Actually, you are," interrupted a new voice from the crowd. A woman in her 50s stepped forward, holding up her phone. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, attorney at law, and I've been live streaming this entire interaction to my followers. Under California law, the accused has the right to know the source of accusations against them." Cole looked panicked. She hadn't anticipated legal expertise emerging from the grocery store crowd. "Furthermore," Walsh continued, "what we've witnessed here appears to be abuse of police power based on fabricated allegations. That's a federal civil rights violation." The crowd murmured with growing anger and understanding. What they initially thought was a celebrity throwing his weight around was actually a coordinated attack using law enforcement as a weapon. Keanu remained perfectly calm, but his voice gained an edge. "Officer Matthews, I'm going to ask you one more time. Who made the complaint that brought you here?" Matthews glanced desperately at his partner, but Cole was backing away, clearly trying to distance herself from what was rapidly becoming a career-ending situation. "We received a call," Matthews stammered. "From whom?" Keanu pressed. The silence stretched unbearably. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a phone began ringing loudly. An older man answered it, his voice carrying in the quiet store. "Hello. Oh, hey, Richard. What? No, I'm at the grocery store." "Yes, that grocery store. What do you mean? Is it working?" The man's expression shifted as he listened to the caller. "Richard, what are you talking about? You called the police. You told them to." "Oh my God." He hung up, looking around the store in horror. "That was my neighbor, Richard Blackstone. He just asked if the plan was working and if Keanu Reeves had been arrested yet." The revelation hit the crowd like a bomb. Richard Blackstone, the same real estate developer who had previously targeted Keanu's friend Maria Santos in the Judge Judy case. This was a revenge plot, and everyone had just witnessed it unfold in real time. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, processing this information. When he opened them, a new intensity shone through. Not anger, but a crystalline clarity that was somehow more powerful than rage. "So," he said quietly, his voice resonating throughout the store, "Richard Blackstone called in false allegations to have me arrested as revenge for exposing his harassment of an elderly woman." The pieces were fitting together with devastating precision. The refusal to examine evidence, the predetermined narrative, the radio dispatch mentioning high up. It was all part of a coordinated attack using the police as personal enforcers. "Officer Matthews," Keanu continued, "you just attempted to arrest me based on fabricated allegations from someone seeking personal revenge. You refused to examine available evidence. You ignored witness testimony. And you did it all while being recorded by dozens of people." Matthews was visibly shaking now, the handcuffs dangling loosely in his hand. "But here's what's truly tragic," Keanu said, his voice gaining the moral authority that had characterized his public life. "You had a choice. When I asked you to examine the evidence, you could have chosen truth. When witnesses contradicted your narrative, you could have chosen justice. When the situation became clearly corrupt, you could have chosen what was right." The crowd was mesmerized. This was no longer just about a false arrest. It was about the nature of authority, justice, and moral courage. Instead, Keanu continued, "You chose to be someone else's weapon. You chose to abuse your authority for personal revenge that had nothing to do with you. You chose to ignore your oath to serve and protect in favor of serving someone's petty vendetta." Officer Cole was edging toward the exit, clearly trying to escape before the situation worsened for her. "Officer Cole," Keanu called out without turning around. "Where are you going?" She froze, realizing her attempted escape had been noticed. "I asked where you're going," Keanu repeated, finally turning to face her. "Are you abandoning your partner, trying to distance yourself from the corruption you willingly participated in?" The moral authority in his voice was undeniable. He wasn't shouting or threatening. He was simply holding up a mirror that reflected their true character. Because here's what's going to happen next, Keanu said, addressing both officers and the crowd. This footage is going to be seen by millions. Your names will be associated with corruption and abuse of power. And Richard Blackstone's revenge plot will destroy more than just your careers. It will obliterate any credibility he thought he had. The moment of rupture was complete. What had begun as an attempt to humiliate Keanu had transformed into a complete exposure of the corruption arrayed against him. And he faced it all with a dignity that made his attackers appear small and petty by comparison. But the story wasn't over. The most devastating revelations were yet to come. As Keanu's words settled over the crowd like a judgment from on high, Officer Matthews finally made his choice. He slowly lowered the handcuffs, his hand trembling as the reality of his situation became clear. "Mr. Reeves," he said quietly, his voice barely audible above the murmurs, "I need to examine the security footage." It was an admission of defeat, but also the first step toward redemption. Robert, the store manager, practically leaped at the chance to end this nightmare. "Yes, absolutely. Let's go to the security office right now." But Keanu raised a hand. "Actually, I think we should review it right here in front of everyone." The suggestion sent a ripple of anticipation through the crowd. They had witnessed the accusations, the confrontation, and the exposure of corruption. Now they would see the truth with their own eyes. Robert nodded nervously and disappeared into the back office, returning moments later with a laptop connected to the store's security system. He set it up on a nearby customer service counter for all to see. "This is from Camera 7, which covers the produce section," Robert announced, pulling up the footage from an hour earlier. The crowd pressed closer as the video began to play. They watched Keanu enter the produce section, carefully selecting vegetables. They saw a mother with her 2 children struggling with fruit selection. They watched as the little boy tripped and knocked over the apple display. Keanu immediately knelt to help, his movements gentle and kind as he collected the scattered apples and comforted the embarrassed child. The mother's grateful smile was clearly visible as she thanked him. "That's harassment," someone in the crowd called out sarcastically. Robert switched to camera 4, showing the deli counter. Again, the footage depicted Keanu waiting patiently, being polite to the worker, and maintaining appropriate distance from other customers. "Where's this aggressive behavior they talked about?" another voice demanded, but it was the checkout footage that provided the most damning evidence. Camera 2 displayed the entire interaction between Keanu and the woman whose card was declined. The audio was clear enough to hear Keanu's quiet offer to pay for her groceries, her grateful thanks, and Marcus's comment about his kindness. Multiple witnesses reporting harassment, Officer Cole muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Jennifer Walsh, the attorney who had been live streaming, stepped forward with her phone. "I've been broadcasting this entire incident to over 50,000 viewers on multiple platforms. The footage from this security system is now being watched by people around the world." She paused, letting that sink in. "But what's really interesting," she continued, "is what my research team has been discovering about Richard Blackstone while we've been standing here." The crowd turned their attention to her, sensing more revelations were coming. "It turns out this isn't Mr. Blackstone's first attempt at using false allegations to harass people who've crossed him. My team has found at least 6 other instances over the past 5 years where similar complaints were made against individuals who opposed his business interests or exposed his unethical behavior." Keanu listened with growing understanding. "A pattern of corruption." "Exactly," Walsh confirmed. "And in each case, the allegations were made to law enforcement agencies where Mr. Blackstone had connections." Officer Matthews looked ill. "Connections, campaign contributions, charity donations, personal relationships," Walsh listed. "Mr. Blackstone has been very generous to certain police organizations and political figures over the years." The full scope of the corruption was becoming clear. This wasn't just about revenge against Keanu. It was about a systematic abuse of power that had persisted for years. "Officer Matthews," Keanu said, his voice carrying both authority and compassion, "you're not the real villain here. You're a weapon that someone else picked up and tried to use. The question is, what will you do now that you know the truth? Matthews surveyed the crowd, the cameras, the evidence of his manipulation playing out on the security monitor. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I joined the force to help people, to protect and serve. I never wanted to be anyone's personal enforcer. Then don't be, Keanu replied simply. Matthews made his decision. He pulled out his radio and called dispatch. This is Unit 47. I need to speak with a supervisor immediately about the Reeves call. We have a situation here that requires internal investigation. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Even Officer Cole appeared relieved, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. But Keanu wasn't finished. He turned to address the cameras directly, knowing his words would reach far beyond the grocery store. What happened here today isn't just about false accusations or corrupt influence, he said, his voice carrying the moral authority that had defined the entire confrontation. It's about what occurs when people in power forget that they serve justice, not the highest bidder. The crowd fell silent, realizing they were witnessing something historically significant. Richard Blackstone thought he could use his money and connections to destroy someone who exposed his cruelty. He believed he could turn law enforcement into his personal revenge squad. He thought that power and wealth were more important than truth and justice. Keanu paused, looking directly into the nearest camera. He was wrong, and everyone watching this needs to understand that this kind of corruption only works when good people stay silent, when witnesses don't speak up, when officers follow orders without questioning their source, when citizens don't demand accountability. The transformation was complete. What had begun as an attempt to humiliate and destroy Keanu had become a powerful lesson about integrity, courage, and the responsibility that comes with witnessing injustice. Today, all of you chose to speak up, Keanu continued, addressing the crowd. You chose truth over convenience, justice over authority, and what was right when it would have been easier to stay silent. The crowd stood in silence, understanding they had been part of something much larger than a celebrity incident. They had participated in a victory for justice itself. But the most powerful moment was yet to come, as Keanu prepared to deliver a message that would be remembered long after the headlines faded. Something profound shifted in the grocery store. What had begun as a space of conflict and accusation had transformed into a courtroom-like setting where justice had finally been served, not by authority figures, but by ordinary people choosing to stand up for what was right. Officer Matthews stood before Keanu, no longer the aggressive enforcer who had arrived with handcuffs and false accusations. The security footage had stripped away all pretense, revealing him as a man manipulated into betraying his own oath. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had just seen himself clearly for the first time in years. Mr. Reeves, Matthews said, his voice breaking slightly, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the truth about how this really happened. The crowd leaned in, sensing the most important revelations were still to come. 3 days ago, I received a call from Captain Rodriguez. He told me there had been complaints about a celebrity harassing customers at various businesses in Beverly Hills. He said the complaints were credible and that we needed to send a message that star status doesn't exempt anyone from consequences. Matthews paused, clearly struggling with what came next. But when I asked to see the complaint reports, Captain Rodriguez said they were being handled at a higher level. He gave me your description, told me you'd probably be at Ralph's this weekend, and instructed me to observe and act if I witnessed any inappropriate behavior. Keanu listened intently, recognizing that Matthews was revealing more than just this incident. When we arrived and I saw you helping that child and paying for the woman's groceries, I radioed back that there was no evidence of harassment, but Captain Rodriguez ordered me to proceed anyway. He insisted the complaints were serious and that I needed to trust the system. Officer Cole, who had been trying to fade into the background, stepped forward. I want to add something, she said, her voice trembling. This isn't the first time we've received orders like this. There's a pattern of influential individuals calling in complaints, and those complaints always get prioritized, regardless of the evidence. Jennifer Walsh, still live streaming to her growing audience, raised her phone. I want everyone to grasp what we're hearing right now. These officers are describing a systematic corruption within law enforcement, where wealthy individuals can essentially command police harassment against their adversaries. The implications sent shockwaves through the crowd and online viewers. This wasn't merely about Keanu or even Richard Blackstone. It was about the fundamental erosion of equal justice under the law. Keanu absorbed this information with the same calm demeanor he had maintained throughout the ordeal. When he spoke, his voice carried a sadness that transcended personal injury. Officer Matthews, Officer Cole, I want you to understand something. You were victims too. You were turned into weapons against your will, manipulated into betraying everything you joined the force to protect. The grace in his response was striking. Even after being falsely accused, publicly humiliated, and nearly arrested, Keanu extended compassion to those who had wronged him. But victimization doesn't excuse participation, he continued, his voice gaining strength. Both of you had moments where you could have chosen differently, when witnesses contradicted your narrative, when I asked for evidence to be examined, when your own consciences told you something was wrong. You had choices. Matthews nodded, tears welling in his eyes. You're right. I chose to follow orders instead of my oath. I chose convenience over conscience. And now, Keanu asked, what do you choose now? Matthews straightened his shoulders, and for the first time since arriving at the store, he resembled the police officer he had aspired to be. Now I choose to be part of the solution, he declared firmly. I'm going to report this entire chain of command corruption. I'm going to testify about how complaints from wealthy donors receive special treatment. I'm going to ensure this never happens to anyone else. Officer Cole nodded in agreement. I'll back up everything he says. We have documentation, recordings, and patterns we can prove. The transformation was remarkable. Two officers who had arrived as instruments of corruption were now leaving as advocates for justice. But Keanu wasn't finished. He turned to address the crowd and the cameras one final time. Everyone who witnessed what happened here today has learned something vital about power, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just demonstrated grace under ultimate pressure. You've seen how it can be abused, how it can corrupt even good people, and how it can be challenged by ordinary citizens who refuse to remain silent. The crowd listened intently, understanding they were hearing something that transcended the immediate situation. Richard Blackstone believed money and connections could rewrite reality. He thought he could use law enforcement as his personal revenge service. He assumed that because he had power, he was above accountability. Keanu paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. But power without accountability is merely organized cruelty. And today, all of you proved that truth is more powerful than influence, that justice is more important than authority, and that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they choose to stand up for what's right. He looked directly into Jennifer Walsh's camera, speaking to the millions who would eventually see this footage. To everyone watching this, remember what you've witnessed here. Remember that corruption only thrives when good people stay silent. Remember that your voice matters, your witness matters, your choice to speak up matters. Robert, the store manager, stepped forward. Mr. Reeves, I want to personally apologize for not acting sooner. I should have insisted we check the footage immediately. Robert, Keanu replied with a gentle smile, you found your courage when it mattered most, and that's what counts. Marcus, the young cashier who had defended Keanu from the start, approached nervously. Mr. Reeves, I just want to say what you did today was incredible. You didn't just defend yourself. You defended all of us. Keanu placed a gentle hand on Marcus' shoulder. You defended me when it would have been easier to stay quiet. That took real courage. As the crowd began to disperse, many stopped to shake Keanu's hand or simply express their gratitude. The full scope of what had transpired became clear. What Richard Blackstone had intended as a private humiliation had transformed into a public education about justice, dignity, and the power of moral courage. Within hours, the footage would go viral worldwide. Richard Blackstone's corruption would be exposed. His business empire would crumble under investigation, and his attempts to use law enforcement as a personal weapon would lead to criminal charges. More importantly, millions would witness what happens when someone confronts injustice with dignity, responds to cruelty with grace, and uses their platform not for revenge, but for education. Keanu Reeves had entered a grocery store as a private citizen, buying ingredients for dinner with his sister. He was leaving as a symbol of what it means to stand up for truth when lies seem more convenient, to choose justice when authority fails, and to treat even your enemies with the humanity they tried to deny you. The transformation was complete. Not just his, but for everyone who witnessed it. They all learned that real power doesn't stem from wealth or position, but from the choice to do what's right when doing what's wrong would be easier. And that lesson would resonate far beyond a grocery store in Beverly Hills, reminding the world that heroes aren't merely characters in movies.